Okay, I made coaches over $1 million cash in the last 12 months, and I just want to give you my pre-call SOP that I've learned by messing up a ton, testing things out, and just like falling on my face so many times with this process. I want to just give you it, map out our entire pre-call process. That way you can just take it in your own business, have your GO implement it. And if you're watching this, you're probably a coach running your own offer or you're a GO. Either way, you can make some money after this 10 minutes. This 10 minutes is purely intended you to walk away with like tangible stuff, like actual things that you can plug into your pre-call process that will lift not only your show rate, but your close rate. Because the truth is, if you do it the right way, it genuinely changes the business. And so first thing is pre-call conversation over pre-call confirmation. I was told this by a very smart dude, ran one of the biggest info offers in the space, over 60 million. And ran the entire offer. And this was the one thing he told me about pre-call. And it changed the way I thought about it fundamentally. And so essentially it's let robots be robots. Like the reminders, a lot of people try to like automate a JHL number to send this text and then have the setter call from that number as well. And then like continue conversation. Like the thing is, every team that I have worked with that has succeeded exceptionally in pre-call and show rate and like pre-selling prospects always comes from a manual over automated process, because the Calendly reminders, all those things, like we can send those out. I'm not saying to turn those off, but let robots be robots. The prospect should know when they're getting an automated message versus when they're getting a message from an actual rep. And so what it allows us to do, it allows us to increase consumption on the stuff we want to send over, just because we make the distinct correlation or distinct like separation between an actual rep texting them and an actual robot texting them. And so very first thing, let robots be robots. Do not try to automate and then also personally reach out and have setter operate out of the same phone number. Okay, it just frames in the wrong way. Setter's not going to get a text back. There's going to be no buy-in to go and like accountability to watch those videos, whatever you want to send them. So that's first thing. So next thing real quick, what are our objectives when we're making a pre-call machine? Right? If you're a GO, if you're running your own offers coach, what you need to be looking at is how do I build machines in my business? Okay, so what is my lead to book machine? What is my book to show machine? What is my show to close machine? Right? These are the three things. Like if you just simplify your business to its core, like these are the things in your sales process that even matter. Okay, so today we're talking about obviously the book to show. Okay, so what are our objectives when we're like working on our book to show machine? Okay, first is the frame position of the call. No longer can we, unless you're like a very high profile personal brand, you can no longer frame like massive extreme scarcity, like posting your story like 2 spots left or whatever it is that they used to do in 2020. You no longer do that. So what do we do instead that's just as effective and even more as effective and actually builds your brand instead of destroys it? Okay, first thing is you have to get to the root perceived problem of every single one of your prospects. What I mean by that is every single one of your prospects has a different reason why they're getting on the phone in the first place. And so your sales team SOP has to be to find out every single person's perceived problem before the actual call. That way they can frame the call in that light. If you have a DM setter, one of the questions in their script has to be, what are you struggling more with? For example, we had a copywriting offer we worked with, and most people came in for 2 reasons. 1, to either get better at copywriting the skill, or 2, to get clients. And so before the call, like we would get really, really clear on what it is out of the 2 that person was committed to getting help from. Okay, so that's 1. We even went even deeper. We asked them, cool, I saw that you want to write emails. Like, who did you want to write emails for? Right? So we got like target niche and stuff. So we got a little bit deeper than like most people do. But it's because I want to get hyper relevancy in order to position the call in the best light possible. So not only is it like an enrollment call now, like they show up to the call because the way we word the phrasing, it's like, hey, I know you want to do this, X, Y, and Z. I would love to show you how our students on the inside like go ahead and do that and succeed like a lot quicker or a lot faster or a lot like smoother or make more money, have higher profit margins, all these things. So now you frame the closer in a real expert light. For example, like if I went to, let's just say Iman, and Iman's sales rep said, oh, like you're struggling with show rate? Dude, that's easy. Let me just show you like what our guys do inside to like succeed with show rate. Like hop on this call. It'll show you what they walk through XYZ. I would be on that call like without a doubt. I'm missing my dog's birthday for that call, right? So take that like actual subconscious, how that subconscious works, into your own offer, because there are people that are dying for a solution, and you can leverage that to actually get them to show up to the call and increase your show rate, and obviously therefore close more calls, because you can frame the perceived value of the call, but only if you understand the perceived problem to a T. So that's first thing. Second thing, educate on model and method. We want them obviously showing to the call educating meaning on the logistical side of things. And so I want to bring up an important point, and it's that there are 3 closes that need to happen for someone to buy. Right? Change, method, solution. Change, obviously, they need to be sold, that they need to make some sort of change in their life, which is why they're investing in something, right? But method and solution are the really important ones. These are the ones we have a lot of control over before the actual call. Okay, so what I mean by method and solution, for example, let's just say we had point A and we had point B. For example, to get from point A to point B, you can either go by air, you can go by water, you can go by land, right? Before I sell you that like you need to buy the plane ticket, which is the most expensive, I need to sell you first on why it is that you need to travel by air instead of land or water. And so no one ever acknowledges this step, but in order to get them to like buy, again, like purchase your solution, you need to get them aligned on the method. That's a little more trickier than it sounds. Okay, so very first thing, we need to educate on not only the model, but it's the best method to get to where they want to go. This is very prevalent in B2C. They want to make 20K a month and they don't give a shit what they need to log into or do to get there at all, right? But again, know your audience, because some people might want to make 5K a month while still working their job, whereas opposed to some audiences want to make 20, 30K a month and work only 4 hours a day. So you can phrase things differently, and like these small like niche changes are the reason why some offers do well, some offers don't. And it's the reason why some sales teams can't seem to close anything, and the other ones seem like they're talking directly to the pain points of every single prospect. And what to do, it's because obviously the framing, and it's the education before the call that makes that difference. So anyways, educate on model and method. Educate on, you need to sell them on the method before you sell them on the solution. You can't just skip to program, okay? Third thing, eliminate limiting beliefs. This is pretty self-explanatory. People say they do this, but they really don't. For example, like obviously we have time and money, those two being the biggest objections that people will give you, and like you'll try to solve them by giving them emotional things or client interviews, XYZ. But you need to understand that like at this point, people are a lot more logical than you might think, right? For example, if you have an offer like a BizUp offer, what you need to be doing is if they have a 9 to 5, which again, this is important for the pre-call process where I talk about people like having context on each lead. Let's just say you have a lead coming on the call who has a 9 to 5 and you're selling them a BizUp to get out of that 9 to 5, right? What if they don't want to leave their 9 to 5, but add an extra 3 to 5K on top of additional income, and their main concern on time isn't like a malintent objection. They just aren't convinced that they can do this without putting in like more hours than they have at their disposal. And so sending them a pre-call asset that completely acknowledges the fact that, hey, like you actually don't need over 4 hours a day to do this. Your time after work is more than enough, especially if you have the blueprint. Here's X, Y, and Z people that have done it before you, right? So when I say time, money, it's a lot more logistical than people like to believe. Like people say like, oh, you can make time for anything. Like it's about what you make a priority. Like, no, what we need to be doing is removing these barriers for them to pay us logically. Money is another like great example. For example, we have a client right now who does clothing brand mentorship, and everyone comes on the call with 2 to 3K set aside for their first bulk order. So they have money set aside, but they feel like I need this for my actual business. I can't invest it into actual education. Little do they know that they need to be ordering, like they need to be doing a pre-drop model and eliminating their need for capital. That way they can get data and actually sell clothes. And then a year down the line, they can do a bulk order when they have all this data about their sizes and stuff. But it's actually like counterintuitive to spend that money on a bulk drop when they don't know how to market the bulk drop. So what are we sending them? We're sending them pre-call assets to reframe them into saying, hey, that money that you have set aside for this, I know it's because you're committed, but it's actually much better spent here. Let me explain, right? So we're actually pre-handling these money objections, these time objections, and it's a lot more logical than people think to believe. Okay, so we have frame position the call based on perceived problem. We have educate on the model, making sure that we're not skipping this method piece. We're not going straight to solution, which is just course. And solution is like when people like hard sell in the VSL as opposed to like actually just walking through beliefs. This is why Iman Gaj's VSL works so well when they compared SMMA to dropshipping to ecom, all this kind of stuff. Worked really well because he was selling on method, not solution. And then lastly, eliminate limiting beliefs, which is again, time, money, these things that are more logical than we like to believe, and making sure that we have a process where setters can send over these targeted hyper-relevant assets. Okay, so we get into it. Pre-call, protocol, what does it look like? And what are we using right now that I'm sure we'll iterate on in the future? First thing is, for most offers, we run a triage process, right? Just to make sure we're like cleaning the calendar up, making sure we're calendar efficient. If not, if you don't have a setter on hand, it's not a super important step. Obviously, might have to just make your calendar questions a lot more stricter. But again, we're not here to get you more qualified leads. We're here to get them sold on the call and pre-sold, okay? It's another video to get more qualified people on your calendar, okay? First things first is shoot out value emails, so non-CTA value emails, obviously, based on, you can logic it. So sometimes we do based on Typeform data. We actually logic their emails. That way it feels more relevant for them as well. And we're sending stuff that's actually pushing them closer to the sale. And we do that based off Typeform data. So like Typeform questions that they're filling in before their application. Right when they get triaged, right when they book a call, they're going to a confirmation page. Now this confirmation page, I'll show you here in a second, looks kind of like this. And it accomplishes a couple of the things that we're talking about here in the very top, right? Also, as soon as they book a call, which I don't have on here, they're getting thrown into a group chat with setter and closer. And there's some really, really cool things that we can shoot them over that actually push them along the buying barometer. Okay, and then after that, once they're in like group chat with setter and closer, that setter is then tasked with sending them over a hyper-relevant case study, like a long-form case study of someone who's in their similar position, over to that group chat, and that way closer and setter can keep them accountable for watching it. So by the time they show up to the call, they're getting a ton of non-CTA value emails that are catered to their exact application. They've seen a confirmation page that I'll show you here in a bit. They've watched a pre-call VSL that frames the call, sells them on method, and they've also gotten a hyper-relevant case study of someone who won, who's just like them, and it's been sent over by a personal number. So let me show you what this actually looks like. Very first thing, let me walk you through the actual purposes of each of these. Confirmation page, solely meant to frame this pre-call process. And so if you set your confirmation page up the right way, not only does it have a ton of information they can go and look on and do research with, it also frames the rest of this process before the call. That way you get the most, I guess, like receptivity towards everything you're sending is the best word I can come up with right now. But they actually like pay attention to what you're sending them. They respond on the group chats, XYZ. So confirmation page, very, very important, right? Pre-call VSL is specifically around the method. And so we're just aligning their buying beliefs with the method, not the solution. So the pre-call VSL really isn't anything about the program. It's specifically about like the route they're taking to get to where they want to go, which obviously is like the method that you guys use in the program. Okay. Third thing, hyper relevant case study. So setters will get perceived problem, perceived goal, and then use that information to send over a long form case study from someone in the program who's already won. And that effectively will remove limiting beliefs, preamble objections. For example, time, money objections, all these things that we just talked about. Like having someone like a student say these things is incredibly, incredibly powerful. Okay. So again, confirmation page frames the rest of the pre-call process. Pre-call VSL educates on model and the method, and then hyper relevant case study eliminates limiting beliefs. So already among these three, very specific things we send out, and like the script of them are very important. We already like knock out all of our objectives, and then to top it off, we have value emails that are specifically like pre-handling limiting beliefs and just written content they can go in and read through. Some people just like get sold differently. Okay, so first things first, confirmation page. So this is what it looks like. Just as a client we worked with, we built this out for him. Again, minute 30 video on top, framing the pre-call process. So every step from here on out, actually framing like what the next steps look like between them and the reps and all that kind of stuff. So they have like actual accountability to follow through on it. Next is this pre-call VSL. We actually link the pre-call VSL here, but it's typically like 20 to 25 minutes depending on your offer. Again, DM me if you have any questions on what that length should look like. But it's very, very method focused. For example, like we're getting into the actual logistical side of the problem. We're getting into like the argument behind like why they need to change a little bit. Like all these little emotional things we're throwing in here, but mainly focused around like why they're in the place they're at and like what they need to do to get out of it, right? And then in order to implement it, we charge them for that. Okay, so but the method, to agree with the method is free. So we get a lot more buy-in on that end of thing before we pitch the program, okay? And then very bottom here, we have like common questions, common objections, and then like on the very bottom, we have client interviews. Okay, so that's confirmation page, has a lot of information on it. Pre-call VSL is similar to what we have here. It's the exact same video. We actually make it a YouTube unlisted link, and then setter will send it over in the actual group chat. Get a lot more like people watching it through on there besides this page, but make sure you're making it an unlisted YouTube video and framing it as a free training. And so last thing here, hyper relevant case study. This is example of us, one, leveraging Instagram, which is also a really good habit, but two, going ahead and sending over a client interview that has something to do with a specific lead that was hopping on calendar. For example, Griff was one of the guys that was in the program originally with our actual coach and trained him as a closer. And now every time before the person hops on the phone with Griff, they get to watch his 40-minute interview of where he was and like where he's going to be. And just so happens, Griff is an exact ICP of who we want in the program, meaning they're in school, they're like in college, they want to get out of college and out of like whatever path they're currently on. And before they hop on the phone with Griff, Griff being the closer now, who's also like a past student, they watch a 40-minute talk between Griff and the actual offer owner to, one, bridge that relationship, build that amount of trust because Griff knows the offer owner. That's one. But two, they watch Griff's journey and therefore have a lot more trust in him on the actual call. So bonus points, we did it with someone in the program. But other than that, this person was in college, wanted some advice, wanted to get out of his traditional path. So we sent him Griff's interview because Griff is someone who was in college, made a living outside of it, and was able to leave his corporate job. So that being said, also a good example of us leveraging Instagram. Again, we did not get a lot of receptivity over SMS, but using the creator's account and leveraging Instagram and DMs and getting them to actually consume the long form was super, super key. So two things I think that you guys should take away from this video is not only the principles we talked about, but if this doesn't look like your pre-call protocol, go ahead and find maybe one or two things. Don't plug in the whole thing at once, but find one or two things, whether that be the confirmation page, maybe some of these questions down below here. Maybe it's the pre-call VSL that you need to rewrite. Maybe it's the actual like setter training that you guys need to train your setters to like have these assets on hand and send them over before the call. Maybe it's the setter group chats. All these different things, just take one away, go make money with it, and then send me a DM telling me that you did because I find it fun. But that being said, this is everything that I've learned paying like over 30 grand in mentorships from all the top guys in the space, even outside of mentorships that I paid for, like having close friends in the space that do really, really well. This is the SOP that we now run for every single client because it just works really well. And not so much the tactics being like the confirmation page or the pre-call VSL. More so it works because of the principles, meaning like what we actually target, what are we talking about on these videos. That's the stuff that actually pushes them across that buying. But at the least this 10-15 minute video should give you enough to make another 20-30K this month additional revenue by just focusing on these objectives, these actual principles of what you need to be accomplishing in your pre-call. I guarantee your closers thank you for it. And yeah, anyways, peace.